What you mean it's a bunch of big games this Sunday? You got people talking about Super Bowl matchups. Not only one, but two of these games. We're going to talk about that with Chris Carter here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to the new Locked On NFL, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with the help of our local experts that know your favorites like no one else. I'm the host, the barber, Tony Wiggins, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Chris Carter. That's right, my man, who covers Locked On Steelers and a whole bunch of other stuff. On today's episode, we are actually going to get into the Steelers quarterback issue and let the local expert tell us why Mike Tomlin knows what's best for that team. Lions and Vikings with an NFC Battle of the North. Super Bowl preview number 2. What do I mean number 2? Well, because somebody else says that there's a Super Bowl preview number 1 with all of these big games this weekend. So we are going to make sure we tap into that. We appreciate you for making us your first listen of the day and for being an everydayer here on Locked On NFL, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to tune in again to Locked On NFL tomorrow morning for the madman Tyler Rowland for more NFL coverage. Today's episode, as are all of our Thursday episodes on the Locked On Podcast Network, is brought to you by Prize Picks. That's right. It's Crossover Thursday all over the network. Download the app and use the code Locked On NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. My man, Chris Carter, look, we're going to talk about the contenders. And right now, the Pittsburgh Steelers are one of them. I have to really just acquiesce to you in this situation because all of these contenders we're going to talk about today, including the Steelers, the Jaguars aren't included. So I'm using the local experts to try to hit me up and let me know what's going on. Big game between the Chiefs and the Niners. It seems like we've seen this before.
We've seen it a few times, haven't we? It's kind of crazy. Yeah. When you look at it, here's my thing is like, we're assigning the Super Bowl preview tag to this game because of the history, because they faced twice in the Super Bowl now, and the Chiefs have won both times. I don't know if this is a Super Bowl preview though, because the Niners are 3-3 and they have not played very good football so far. They've been middle of the road. Their wins are the Jets at the first week of the season, which the Patriots, which you better beat them, and the Seahawks, which that's probably their best win. But they lost to the Vikings, who've been playing very well. They've lost to the Rams, who I don't know about that, and they lost to the Cardinals. So they could absolutely bounce back, win this game, and beat the Cowboys going into their bye, and then be 5-3, and then everyone's like, okay, yeah, the Niners, they're still a threat, but they got to prove it right now. I think this, but more than even this being a Super Bowl preview, the Niners got to go out here and prove to everyone that they are for real, and that they still got the hype. And part of it's, Christian McCaffrey's been hurt. They've been dealing with a lot of different things. They've had defensive players missing. But if you want to be that top dog still, you got to prove it, because in the NFC, there's some new blood in there that's working. Some old blood too. The Buccaneers, we know them from last year. They were a threat. They got a better record than the Niners right now. The Falcons are 4-2 right now and playing some decent football with Kirk Cousins. The Vikings, who've beaten the Niners, are 5-0, and no one's figured them out yet. The Lions that lost Aidan Hutchinson, but they're still 4-1. The entire NFC North, they're looking like what the AFC North was supposed to look like. 5-0, 4-1, and 2 4-2 teams right now. So they're playing really well. And like, if you look at that, the Niners better win the NFC West, because I don't know, this NFC conference look kind of packed right now with teams competing for the playoffs.
You're right. And let's listen to the crossover between the Chiefs and the Niners, where Peacock basically laid it out a little bit and said some of the same things you said. I'm glad you mentioned all those teams too. We're going to get to them in just a second, but check this out.
It's the 5-0 Kansas City Chiefs visiting the 3-3 San Francisco 49ers. Super Bowl rematch, week 7. It's going to be a lot of fun, man. And yeah, I feel like the 49ers and the Chiefs haven't played their optimal ball right now. The 49ers had a big win, had a little mini bye coming off a Thursday nighter at the Seattle Seahawks. Those road Thursday games are tough, and that was a huge one. That was the biggest game of the season for the 49ers so far, and might turn out to be the biggest game, because But if you want to get back to the Super Bowl, which the 49ers want to do, you got to win your division. But the Chiefs, even though maybe not playing optimal ball, they're still 5-0, and they still find a way to win. And it's funny because a lot of what we've seen in both Super Bowls, 49ers able to get leads and then kind of just not finishing the job. And the Kansas City Chiefs seem like they're always able, no matter what the conversation is around the team, whether we're still trying to figure out what's going on at wide receiver. Shea Rice is out now. It led by the defense more than Mahomes's offense being the juggernaut for the Kansas City Chiefs. It's a lot of the same conversations we were talking about going into the Super Bowl, Chris. And
the Chiefs are reminding me of the old Patriots, where they just figure out a way and they got it in their DNA that they're going to win, and it doesn't matter how it looks. We just don't care. We're going to win. If we're close in the fourth quarter, we're going to win. And he said something you said. If the 49ers are going to make the playoffs, they got to win that division. They ain't getting in as a wild card.
Yeah, I mean, and they might, there's 7 wild card teams, so there's space to do it, but you can't count on that right now. You haven't started off strong, and the Niners schedule, there's some really tough games ahead. Like, they got this Chiefs game, they got the Cowboys game, they got the Buccaneers later. The Buccaneers are playing some really good football. They got their rematch with the Seahawks, the Packers, the Bills. The Bears are 4-2 right now, and then you get the Lions later in the season. And then they get the Cardinals in Arizona after the Cardinals have beaten you at your house. So, like, they got to turn it on soon. If you go down into a whole 3-4 and even 3-5, you lose the next 2 games, you got to do some serious work to back that up. And again, like, you're in an NFC West where even though you just beat the Seahawks, they're 3-3 right with you. So yeah, the Niners got to put in some work, or it's gonna be a really rough second half of the season for them.
I told you, man, we're a third of the way through the season, and everybody, there are a few teams, like I think the Jaguars, the Panthers, maybe 1 or 2 others that are missing, but those 2 come to mind, like probably the Patriots. Those 3, they're probably already thinking for next year and draft strategy. But it seems like everybody else still fighting for something. At least they have something to gain. What we're going to do, I'm going to pivot a little bit, because that was what I call Super Bowl preview number 1. There's another game that some people believe that if things go a certain way, could be Super Bowl preview number 2. We'll hit that in segment number 2 here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Arena Club. That's right, man. If you are like me and you love collecting, but sometimes collecting can be a little expensive, listen to this. For most of us that like collecting, the idea of spending $2,000 or more on a Luka or Ellie or Mahomes rookie card just isn't in the cards, no pun intended. I love collecting, but that's some serious money to drop. Thanks to slab packs from arenaclub.com, now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that I listed was a hit from last week's Arena Club slab pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards, and clear hit rates for each one. Now, I've had a little bit of experience with Arena Club, and I tell you what, I know a buddy of mine, and he told me it's the real deal, so I got involved in it because of him. And so far, so good. Better than all of these other mystery packs that are out there. Whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform you have to check out. Right now, you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonnfl and use the code LockedOnNFL. That's arenaclub.com/lockedonnfl, code LockedOnNFL for 10% off your first purchase. And today's show is brought to you and sponsored by our friends over at Game Time. If you're like me, sometimes you have to wait until the last minute. I don't know if I'm going to be free. I got to check the weather because I can't run in the rain with the way I'm set up right now. I got to make sure I can free myself up and have the funds to go to this play, sporting event, monster trucks, whatever. And sometimes you get there and you feel bad because people act like your lack of planning is not their emergency. Game Time does no such thing. Game Time relishes in the fact that you showed up at the last minute because they have great last minute seatings, the lowest prices, seat views, all in pricing. And they have a curation process that takes away all of that fluff so you can get exactly what you want when it's time for you to purchase tickets. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and a redeem code. I'm going to spell it for you. LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, rolling along here on Locked On NFL. We're doing a way too early Super Bowl preview show, 7 weeks into the season, but that's kind of what we do, right? We kind of try to see where things are shaping up and where things are headed. Now, we talk about Niners and the Chiefs, and that's a Super Bowl rematch, if you will, because we've seen it a couple of times. The Packers got their quarterback back, and the Texans, well, they got a quarterback in the draft last year. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how they move this week. And Peter Bukowski from Locked On Packers tells us how he thinks this game might go.
A potential Super Bowl preview here. I want to start here, though, because this is a team that right now, even with CJ Stroud, the defense seems to be ahead of the offense. So is that more about, hey, an early season, trying to accommodate Stephon Diggs into the offense now without Nico Collins? Or is this more about the defense to you and really taking that next step?
For me, I would say with the Houston Texans, part of it is a little bit of injuries, and particularly with the running game. Of course, the Packers and the Texans, they run similar offenses. They have similar styles and a similar coaching tree between Matt LaFleur coming from where he came from with the 49ers and, of course, Bobby Slowick as well. And if you think about it, look back in game one where the Houston Texans went to Indianapolis. They just signed Joe Mixon over the offseason. He was one of their marquee free agents, and he runs for 151 yards. And as he told us last week, he was the leading league. He was the leader in rushing yards before he got dropped by that weak butt hip drop tackle that injured his ankle. And ever since he got hurt, the Texans offense did not look the same. Then he comes back last week. They play the New England Patriots, and what happens? They drop 40 on that defense with New England. Of course, that's a team that's in a rebuilding phase, but the offense has looked the best when Joe Mixon has been in the lineup.
What do you know, Chris Carter? People talking about a running back, and running the football is the key to success in 2024. Ain't that something that Pittsburgh been talking about and doing for a long time?
It's all, it's funny, I always say the NFL goes in cycles. When teams get good at one thing, when offenses want to get one thing, the defenses get good at the other. And they get good at shutting that down. And when defenses adjust to that, then the offense has got to get good at something else. And what you're seeing is a lot of teams being good at running the ball, still throwing the ball when they need to, but needing to have a more balanced attack than just spreading the ball out and throwing it everywhere, because now defenses are getting used to that and they're starting to find the easier ways to stop those things. So, I think that's part of what's going on there. I also think what's funny is I kind of get Peter's point here. I actually think this might be more of a Super Bowl preview than Chiefs-Niners, simply because I don't know about the Niners, but I do know that Jordan Love's back and that Green Bay survived the period without him by being 4-2. Yes, they're tied for last in their division right now, and technically they're last in the division because they've lost. They're the only team to have lost an NFC North game, but they're what? 2 games behind or a game and a half behind the Vikings in first place. They can make that up. And Jordan Love has shown he's a bad man, but CJ Stroud's also showed he's a bad man. He's at 5-1 right now. If the playoffs were to start today, the Texans would technically be the 2 seed because they've simply played one more game than the Chiefs, and they've lost one. The Chiefs are 5-0. They're 5-1. So yeah, I think this could be a Super Bowl preview, and I like how both of these teams are playing so far. But that's the thing that you said about this week. There's a lot of really good matchups, and I think that this is a really good kind of precursor that's going to close the book on the first third of the season and get us into the second third.
Copycatting is good if you're copycatting something that's good. Copycatting is terrible if you copycat something that's not real good and you don't do it real well. And, there's rules to life. So this is a bit. This ain't got nothing to do with football. I got to tell y'all something. Chris Carter had on a red shirt just like me when we started this show.
I ain't copycat you. I woke up out my morning. I wore my Kansas City Monarchs shirt because I was repping the Negro Leagues. And then I'm like, oh, my boy Wig got a red shirt. So I said, okay, let me put my Stevie Wonder blue shirt on so we ain't be matching out here.
Yeah, see, he followed rules. Chris Carter's from the inner city just like me. And Chris Carter said, ain't no way I'm showing up wearing the same shirt, the color shirt as this joker. He actually got up and went and put that blue shirt on, man. So he would not look like me. That's how much you can't just be copycat people around here. We know the rules. We definitely know the rules. I tell you what does feel good from a football perspective, though, is that we're having these interconference conversations where the NFC teams actually have a chance. Because other than the Rams, the last, I don't know how long, it's been dominated by the AFC. It looked like the AFC championship game was like the SEC championship game. And then, by the way, whoever wins that gonna go win the Super Bowl every single year. So we got another matchup. The Bucks, they look upstart. I got people talking about that Baker Mayfield may be an MVP candidate. You know what? They play Baltimore. If they win this game, and he looks good, Baker Mayfield really might be an MVP candidate. I'm going to let you see my man Yarko and these whole gang of guys right here on the NFC South squad, let you know what they said about it.
I think they're fully capable. I think they showed that, they're capable of going toe-to-toe with anyone in the NFL, at least offensively. The question is, what defense is going to show up? Usually when the Bucs would face Derrick Henry, it was like, oh, well, who cares? The Bucs have one of the best run defenses in the NFL, but this is not Will Levis or Ryan Tannehill who's playing quarterback with Derrick Henry being, the entire offense, and the Bucs run defense has not been great. So this is going to be a really interesting matchup. Lamar has gotten the better of the Bucs numerous times, but at the same time, emotion is going to play into this. And this is the Bucs return home after Hurricane Milton hits and playing in front of those fans. I think they already said last week against the Saints, they were playing for something bigger. They were playing for something more than themselves. It was more than just a game. Now you get to go in front of those fans, and I think it's really going to help elevate their game. I don't know if it'll be enough to get a win, but I don't think anyone should be surprised if the Bucs end up winning on Monday night.
Chris Carter, the Ravens are, to me, the hottest team. I know you don't want me to hear me talk about them all day, and we're going to get to the Steelers, but they're the hottest. Yeah, they're the hottest team. They look really good. This is a chance for the Bucs to really do something and put their foot forward and show people, hey, man, we are more than, the team that won one Super Bowl with Tom Brady. They're a gritty, little, nasty, old school Todd Bowles coach ball club. If they win this game, man, what do you think people start to think and say about them?
I mean, I think they'll start to say. They're already saying the Buccaneers are a tough team. They're 4-2. They're only behind the Falcons right now because the Falcons have won all three of their division games, including a game they've beaten the Buccaneers in. But if they win this game against the Baltimore Ravens, all of a sudden they're 5-2. If the Falcons win their games, they'd be tied with the Falcons atop the division. They'd be in a serious position. And the Ravens have played very good football to start. Ravens have had their bumps in the road. They're not perfect or anything like that. But at the same time, they're also been a team that's beaten some good teams. They've beaten the Cowboys. They beat the snot out of the Bills. They won a shootout with the Bengals. They beat the Commanders, who've been very strong to start. It is, and they've also lost to the Chiefs, and they lost to the Raiders so far. So the Ravens have come out, and they've come out swinging 4-2 with a tough 6-game spread here. And I think if you look at the Commanders, you thought that might have been a break, but they still won that one. If the Buccaneers win this game, all of a sudden the Ravens are 4-3. And they have some serious tests down the road. They still haven't played the Steelers, who are 7-1 against them in their last 8 times they've met up. So I think the Ravens kind of need this one, but I also think the Buccaneers, what you said, Todd Bowles has made them a tough, gritty, old school defensive teams. But guess what? Baker Mayfield has come in. He hasn't been the greatest quarterback of all time or anything like that. But you know what he's done? He's taken advantage of the fact that this team has left him Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, two of the better receivers in the NFL. No, and that's a heck of a tandem to have while you got these other things going for you. They've invested in this offensive line. That's a good situation that they're in right now. And like you said, the Buccaneers, they didn't blow it up after Tom Brady left. They kept around a lot of guys that they could, and look at them still battling. So I think that the Buccaneers, that they got something cooking. I think that's going to be a major matchup to watch this weekend, something that I'll be having my eyes on.
No doubt about it. One of the fortunate byproducts when you cover a 1-5 team like me, when they play in London, they play at 9:30 in the morning. So you get a chance to sit in front of TV and catch all of these games. And this is one I never thought I'd be glued in front of the TV, the Lions and the Vikings. But you just mentioned the Bucs, and there's something about these teams that are culture centric. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't mean they don't have a great quarterback. Ben Roethlisberger was a great quarterback, but Pittsburgh is culture centric. They're not coach centric. They're not one player quarterback. And Tom Brady's the GOAT. The Patriots were culture centric. That was a whole thing. So now you see Baker Mayfield, you see Jared Goff, and Sam Darnold all playing and thriving in culture centric teams. And we're going to talk about the Battle of the North when we get to a third segment here on Locked On NFL. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Quite simply, man, it's just America's #1 sports book. And it got like that. There's a reason, right? You don't become #1 until you act like #1. And that's exactly what FanDuel is. They do #1 type stuff. Like once you make your wagers, you don't have to change screens. You can stay on that screen while you're watching the scores, and you can check out stats. Even if you're doing fantasy stuff, you can multitask. You can view live play-by-play and so much more from the same page where you place your bets. Speaking of those bets, when you place your first $5 bet, whether you win or not, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. No joke. Once you place that first $5 bet, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets to start betting with FanDuel. I didn't say you had to win. I just said you had to place the bet. And that is the absolute truth. FanDuel never lets me down. When your team's not playing well, you might as well win some money. Even if you don't think they're going to win, it don't matter. Money don't matter what your feelings think. Make sure you go to FanDuel at FanDuel.com. It's America's #1 sports book. Have you some fun if you're having a bad season, and at least you can put some money in your pocket and get ready for the holidays. That's FanDuel, America's #1 sports book at FanDuel.com. Rolling along here on Locked On NFL, where it is your team every day. We always thank you for making us your first listen. Big game implications in the North. Talking about teams that have done things the right way, the Detroit Lions and the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings are still probably the biggest surprise to me, I think, Chris, in 5-6 years. I honestly thought they'd be like where the Patriots are. I always thought they were well coached, but they are doing a lot of good things offensively and defensively, and they're benefiting from the fact that old teams didn't want Brian Flores, and now he's flourishing up there with Kevin O'Connell. Let's listen to the preview from the guys of the NFC squad. We're gonna show you the AFC squad. You'll see my mug up there in a minute, but this is a lot of fun. We do this every week. Guys just get together and we talk, guys and girls, we get together and just talk about each other's teams and talk a whole bunch of smack like guys sitting at a bar. Check this out real quick as they talk about the Battle of the North.
Aaron Freeman, haven't heard from you in a little bit, so we're gonna kick this over to you. NFC North division battle, big one, Detroit Lions visiting the Minnesota Vikings. Again, Vikings are favored by 2.5 points. No Aidan Hutchinson. Do you think the Lions, how big of an impact is that to you in this game?
I think it's huge. Aidan Hutchinson is basically the Lions pass rush. And without him, I don't know if that defense is nearly as good. They've made upgrades in the secondary and whatnot. But without having a pass rush going up against a Vikings offense that is, firing on most cylinders, you just got to kind of squint on some of the Sam Darnold stuff, but for the most part, like they're firing on most of their cylinders. I think it's going to be a challenge for them. And Brian Flores is cooking up some things in the lab to try to throw a wrench into that Lions offense. So this is going to be an interesting matchup, but I think this is going to be a big test for the Lions because I think the assumption that a lot of people have is now it's going to just kind of ride on their offense because I don't know their defense is going to be nearly as good as it is capable of being without Aidan Hutchinson. And
Aidan Hutchinson is a great player. I hated to see what happened to him the other night, and I wish him a quick and fast recovery. I just don't think the Lions are like a one-player team. And, I think they're going to be able to figure it out. Now, he might be the difference between them winning a big game like in the NFC Championship, but I don't think they're going to fall apart without that. What do you think about this game in that situation?
I mean, here's the thing is that they're not a one-player team, but Aidan Hutchinson is one of those players that can change the game. I mean, he's been a game wrecker so far this season. So losing a game like a player like that, it's going to have an impact. As much as no matter how good your team is, you can't just shrug that off. And I think that when you look at these two teams and the way they're playing, the Vikings are playing some really good defense, even outside of just even outside of just playing the offense. We've seen Sam Darnold light it up a little bit here. But if you looked at points allowed right now, they still are giving up the second fewest points in the NFL. Now, points per game, it switches up a little bit because they played only 5 games, but still, when you look at how they've played so far this year, I think that they're a team that has to be taken seriously. And I think when you look at the Vikings, even with that adjustment, they're the third best defense. That to me is the story of this game: is can the Vikings defense quell the Lions offense? Because you see what the Lions did this past weekend to the Cowboys. They just scored everywhere on them. They made it so it didn't matter where Aidan Hutchinson was, because you wasn't scoring that many points even when he wasn't on the field. So right. I look at the Vikings and I think, man, I'm actually picking them to win this game without Aidan Hutchinson on the other side there. I think that is a major blow to them. And I think that the Lions could eventually recover. They were actually my Super Bowl pick this year in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette when we did our season preview. I thought the Lions would meet the Ravens in the Super Bowl and beat them there. But with Aidan Hutchinson out, I need to see how that team plays without him, because he was a big factor into why I picked them.
Absolutely, no doubt. Must see TV for me. And I know you'll be covering the game that you're covering, Chris. Always, credential member of the media like me. And this is one game where, this whole weekend, this whole slate, I'm just glad I'll be able to sit in front of a TV. Now, don't get me wrong. I love being credentialed. I love going to Jaguar games, and I love interacting with people. But this is a really, really fun week where I don't have to sit and watch my phone in the press box. I tell you what, a lot of talk around the league has been about Pittsburgh and their start, and how people are happy about Justin Fields. I'm a starting quarterback on my fantasy team. And that's why we love the local experts here at Locked On NFL, because it gives a little different perspective than the things that you hear nationally. And I know that from the team that I cover. I'm going to listen to a little small clip. It's just 24 seconds. I wanted to make sure we promoted the AFC squad also, so you guys can make sure you can check these podcasts out wherever you get your podcasts. They usually show up on your team page probably Wednesday or Thursday. However, it's a lot of fun. They brought up the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then I'm going to let CC educate us and cook about what's really going on up with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields.
The North remembers. I hear you with Pittsburgh, because that Mike Tomlin magic rears its head every year, and in Baltimore we have to deal with it every year. Of like, this is finally the year that Pittsburgh is going to go below 500, and then Mike Tomlin pulls these corpses out of his closet and makes this team go 9-8 or something. But I think with Baltimore, they're finding their groove, and so I think Pittsburgh will be there.
All right, let's stop right there. Pittsburgh will be there. He knows 7 out of 8. Ostraker ain't crazy. No matter how they're playing, he knows the Steelers are going to be there, and they're going to come. You're going to turn around, and that gold and that black and yellow is going to be looking right at you. Who's going to be the quarterback? Let us all know from the expert of the Pittsburgh Steelers what exactly is going on with the quarterback situation and why there might be a change.
So when I'm a journalist, and as a journalist, I report. I do very hard to report what is said. And what Mike Tomlin said at the top of the week when I sat in his press conference on Tuesday, I sit in the front row. I get to talk to him and ask him questions. He straight up said, hey, he's not committing to a player at this point in time, but both are going to get QB1 reps, and he's going to see how they practice throughout the week, and that's going to factor into their play. Now, with that being said, I think it will be Russell Wilson, particularly because this team went and got Russell Wilson in free agency before they traded for Justin Fields. They traded for Justin Fields because they had to trade away Kenny Pickett, because Kenny Pickett didn't want to sit behind Russell Wilson this season. I did a film study on Justin Fields and acknowledged, hey, this guy's made the most plays of the Steelers offense so far, that's scoring 20.7 points per game, which is higher than any of their last 3 years in the NFL. But at the same time, he's also missed the most plays. And my film study showed that, hey, I'm not talking about, ridiculous Patrick Mahomes level throws. I'm talking about cover 2 defense, and George Pickens runs a post in between the safeties, and it's open 15, 20 yards downfield with no pressure in your face, and you're checking it down into a guy that's double covered. Those are the things that Justin Fields, I feel has missed, especially more in the last 3 weeks. The first 3 games, I felt I even said at the end of the Chargers game the Steelers played, I was like, oh, no, this guy's figuring it out, because he was in the right trajectory. But that trajectory has gone the other way in the last 3 games, in my opinion, with Justin Fields. And that doesn't mean he's doomed to never figure it out. I also think it doesn't mean he's doomed to not even be back this season, because there's a chance Russell Wilson doesn't have play well at some point, and they say, hey, we need to switch it up. We'll throw in our relief pitcher here and see what Justin has. But to me, looking at Russell Wilson, what you're hoping that he can do is saying, hey, Russell, we have this system. We want to run the ball, but we want to hit these shots downfield. The Steelers, where Justin Fields has been given the 5th most play action passes of any quarterback in the NFL, but he ranks 32nd in yards per attempt, and he ranks like 33rd in his average depth of targets on play action passes, because he's on average, he's checking it down on play action passes. And it's not just because there's pressure, it's because I think he's playing it safe and he's trying to figure out his balance. They're going to trust Russell Wilson and say, hey, Russ, take that shot when you see it, man. Like there was a play where it was a solid 4-yard game. They called play action. Fields hits Connor Hayward in the flat. He gets 4 yards, sets up 2nd and 6. But Calvin Austin, the receiver who a lot of people have overlooked because he's just not getting the targets, runs a corner route. He's practically uncovered 20 yards downfield, and Justin Fields doesn't even look at him. And again, that's not saying Justin Fields is terrible and he won't figure it out, but that's what the Steelers are hoping that Russell Wilson is able to take advantage of more regularly in the Steelers offense. Now, at the same time, you got to acknowledge Justin Fields has an X factor. The first rushing touchdown that he had, because he had 2 in this last game, the Raiders had everything covered up. They covered up Pat Fryman. They covered up Darnell Washington. They had all. There was no easy throw there, and there was even a defensive lineman staring at Justin Fields. But guess what? It didn't matter because he's just that fast. And so when you have that X factor and that ability on the field, that is a bonus. That is a positive. However, you have to weigh what's more important: hitting the routine passing plays routinely, as Mike Tomlin often says, to make routine plays routinely, or having that X factor player. Now, if Russell Wilson comes in and he's not making those routine throws, Justin Fields going back in the game. But I think the Steelers, they want to see what Russell Wilson got when, by all accounts, TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, Cam Hayward, the captains of this team and the leaders of the defense, they wanted to go get Russell Wilson, even when they had Kenny Pickett on the roster, because they were like, look, we want a leader like that. He's available for cheap. Let's go get him. And I think the Steelers are eager to see, can Russell Wilson bring that to the Steelers. They're not asking Russell Wilson to make this a top 10 offense. I think that's where a lot of people are like, oh, they think he's going to do all this. No, they don't. They think he's going to balance the offense, just give them solid quarterback play so that they can balance it with a strong running attack, which we saw glimpses of with Najee Harris averaging 7 yards per carry against the Raiders and running past Max Crosby. I think that if he achieves that makes the Steelers dangerous, because we talked about how the Vikings are the number 3 defense right now with their points per game. The Steelers are number 2. Yeah. And they're number 2 with a so-so offense. With that offense, I think that ranks in like the mid 20s right now, maybe the high 20s. If they can get an offense that it gets around to like 16th in the NFL, average 23, 24 points per game, get to that level consistent with Russell Wilson, while that defense is still playing the way it is, then all of a sudden the Steelers are a contender. Kevin Ostreicher knows this because he covers the Ravens. When we did our AFC North division preview, the Ohio guys were like, Steelers finished in last place. There's no way. There's no way they're competitors. There's absolutely no way. Kevin Ostreicher was like, I'm not saying they're going to win, but like I'm at least going to give them 3rd place. I said, hey, they're probably going to finish in 2nd. I think the Ravens, they're my AFC favorite this year. But I warn people, Mike Tomlin don't lay down. He got playmakers. They've assembled people. They're going to come out banging, and they might lose this game with Russell Wilson because they got the Jets went and got Devontae Adams. Want to see how Rodgers and Adams play together. But best believe when December come around, the Steelers going to be right in that playoff race. And if you're lacking, they're going to catch you slipping. They're going to find their way into the playoffs. And I think the whole point of getting a Russell Wilson is getting a quarterback who's competent in a playoff game, because even with Ben Roethlisberger, they haven't had that since 2016.
Yep. And just imagine this. You get that out of Wilson, and then all of a sudden when Calvin Austin and these dudes are catching those wide open balls, now the narrative that they don't have any wide receivers, that goes out the window.
Exactly.
Right. And then guess what you can come to? Oh, we get in the playoffs? Russ, hold on for a minute. Justin, go do your thing for a second. And now you done threw a curveball in it, and it's like, oh God. And then you come back with Russ. If you can work that dynamic out, man, this can really, but see, I love what you did. You said I'm a journalist. And I love that, because you got to separate facts from feelings. A lot of people are in their feelings, but my man came with facts and film study, and that's what we do here on Locked On NFL. Make sure you go over to Locked On Steelers also and check Chris Carter out on a daily basis. And then make your second listen Locked On NFL, like where you are right now, but you can do it twice. Early in the morning with Tyler, the madman rolling. Check him out early in the morning. It's like a double shot of espresso at 6 a.m. And then around noon, come hang with me at the barbershop, and we give it to you just like we just did. Hey, man, Chris, thanks. We'll see you again, obviously, next Thursday. Good luck to the Steelers this weekend. Hope everybody stays healthy. And you guys, man, make sure y'all enjoy the game of your choice this weekend and tune in to Locked On NFL, because it's your team every day.